flaw. But maybe not. Maybe it's not a flaw. How fast is this? Now there's a question of what does this have to do with real biological evolution? Well, I don't know. Here I need your help, but I'll tell you the way I thought about it, and a comment made by a colleague. I said, well, what is n in real biology? Well, the human genome has how many bits? Well, it's 6 times 10 to the 9 bits. So let's put 6 to the 10 to the 9 in here. That turns out to be roughly the age in years of life of this planet, and of life on this planet, roughly. So then what is n squared and n cubed like? Well, it's very, very large. If we're measuring in years, if we're taking n to be 6 times 10 to the 9, and our unit of time is years, well, here it's mutations tried. But if you put that in here, you get something which is much bigger. It's the square of the number of years that life has had to evolve on this planet roughly. So if this kind of comparison of theory with experiment is valid, then you really would want this to be, this was a comment by Chris Kalude, a colleague in Auckland. He said, really, this ought to be much closer to this if you want to use this as a justification, saying that Darwinian evolution can account for our presence here. Yes, Virginia?
But remember that this n is not years. This n is the tries.
The mutations tried.
Yes. So and they don't happen like once a year.
Right.
They happen rather more often.
No, I agree. I think this is a pretty sloppy. I'm not really good at these back of the envelope estimates that all good physicists are good at, right? So, or at least Fermi could always figure out the dominant effect, and just with a piece of scrap paper in high school mathematics give a good estimate for what would happen. So, but I don't know how to do that. Stan Ulam was unusual. He was a pure mathematician, but the reason he was so valuable at Los Alamos, well, it's unfortunately valuable because it means I've heard stories that he was the one who figured out how to make the hydrogen bomb work, was because it turned out he had that Fermi-like talent to make good estimates, of what the major effect was, and which is unusual for a pure mathematician. So I don't know. I gave these remarks was it in Buenos Aires, and there were some biologists present, and they thought that that way of trying to connect this with real biology was not correct. So the point is, I don't know, and I would be curious to know what you people know. This is very far removed from real biology. Real biology, what is happening in this process? Who are the organisms which are these very fit organisms which are reaching busy beaver function of n fitness in this case? And in this case, it turns out what they are really is good approximations of the halting probability. And basically, you get the fitness, this is what I'll be discussing tomorrow, busy beaver function of n, when you've gotten n bits of the halting probability right. You're getting better and better approximations of the halting probability from below. I didn't expect this to happen, by the way. I mean, I set up this model, and then I was sort of surprised to see that an old friend emerged by evolution from this model. It turns out that what happens in these two cases is that, not in this case, but in these two cases, the way you prove these two things is that the halting probability is emerging. Now, I don't think that real biology has much to do with the halting probability, frankly. This is a kind of a Platonic ideal of Darwinian evolution. So this whole thing may be completely irrelevant to real biology. And here, the new information that's coming into your system, into your organisms, is coming basically for an oracle for the halting problem that you're allowed to use in a highly restricted way. But in the real physical world, most of us think there are no oracles for the halting problem. So this model, it's possible that it really has nothing to do with real biology. It's sort of maybe mathematically it might be, if I'm lucky, it might be sort of the ideal, asymptotic limit or Platonic ideal, right, of the simplest possible system which satisfies John Maynard Smith's definition of being alive, if I'm lucky. But that doesn't mean that it has anything to do with real biology. So I think this is something that needs to be thought about more. Okay, so I've gone over my time, but not too much, fortunately. So this is what you can prove happens in this model, and the way pure mathematics works is a definition is justified by the theorems you can prove with it. So these definitions are good of what a living organism is, what a mutation is, if you can build a beautiful theory around them. If you can't prove anything, then your definitions are no good. So this tends to suggest that the definitions have some merit, but it remains to be seen how far you can go with this whole train of thought. Now, what the plan? So this completes the second of 4 talks. The plan for tomorrow is to give a sketch of how you prove this, and that's difficult, and that's likely to be. Ideally, if you knew algorithmic information theory, then that talk could be really pretty understandable. But I'm going to have to try to wave my hands and give you an overview and try to give you a sort of a sketch. So it's not going to be what a pure mathematician would regard as a valid proof, but it's going to be sort of trying to suggest how try to convince you, suggest in general terms how the proof works. Okay, the proof is given in detail in the paper Life is Evolving Software, which will be published next year, and it also is available on my website, by the way, that technical paper. The book is not available on my website. The publisher would kill me, but the technical paper is. So I'm going to try to give an overview of that. So maybe some of you don't want to come tomorrow, and you can just skip to Thursday, where again it's going to be more at the level of the first talk. Well, Virginia's going to talk about philosophy, methodology, interdisciplinary work, philosophy of science, and how metabiology.
Applied to metabiology, of course.
Philosophy
in general, yes.
Right, the philosophy of science applied to metabiology. Virginia's a philosopher. So that talk is going to have it will be in some ways similar to yesterday's talk, but it'll be more philosophical. But it'll even be less technical. It'll be less technical mathematically than yesterday's talk, but there'll be more connections with the philosophy of science. So some of you might just want to skip tomorrow. Well, some of you will probably not come back, which is fine. But if you can only come back for one talk, one possibility is to skip tomorrow and come back on Thursday, because it's more likely to be of value to you. Okay, now if there are questions or comments, I'm happy to. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
First, I want to make a comment, because here we are teaching a course, a master course on quantum information, and Professor Galindo is explaining your algorithmic information theory, complexity algorithmic theory, and some of the students in the audience attend the course.
Well, that's helpful. I hope some of these people will come tomorrow.
Yeah, probably this is one of the few places where algorithmic
information
theory is explained.
That's great, because it's not usually taught as part of quantum information theory. So that's great. So some people here should be able to get some profit from tomorrow.
Now, open questions you want.
Or criticisms. If you're a biologist, any biologist here, this is now your moment to say this is all nonsense. What does this have to do with biology? Yeah, I would be curious to know what your reaction is. Yeah, okay.
Let me moderate.
Right, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Have you thought of, sometimes a mutation in an organism will cause it to make some change to its own environment? So have you thought about changing the fitness function along with the mutation, and will that have any impact?
Well, I haven't, no. One thing I have thought about is how to put sex or a population into this model. And it actually turns out that it's not sex, it's symbiosis, which Lynn Margulis says is more important she says it in guarded terms, but according to Abdallah, she's really saying she disagrees with Darwin, and what really drives evolution forward is symbiosis. It turns out that the sophisticated one-celled organisms, which have nuclei, they're not bacteria, which don't have nuclei, they have things called mitochondria, ribosomes, other organs which she's made a very good case that these were actually separate organisms which got incorporated. In fact, mitochondria have their own DNA. You know, they're matrilineal. They only inherit from the mother. So how do you put symbiosis in this model? Well, it's very easy. What you do is you have a mutation. Well, the first step is easy. You have a mutation. A mutation now will take as input two organisms and will produce as output another organism. That's not sex, because in sex you have to throw away half of the genetic information from each of the parents. But in symbiosis you can keep the whole thing, because you just but then I don't know how to put a population in here, and you know, what is but that's, I think, a possible line of research. It turns out that two of the three main alternative mechanisms to Darwinism that are discussed here, I can sort of fit in this model, it seems to me. But maybe I'm fooling myself. Yeah. So.
I haven't had a question really. I'm a student of Maximus Andin.
Oh, wonderful!
I'm actually
is there
doing my PhD.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is he around? Any chance one could have?
Yeah, he's here in Alcalá de Henares, but yeah, actually he's in Universidad Autónoma de Madrid.
Right.
And he's in